Hi, my name is Matt. Welcome to another episode of Unbearable 73. This is the first episode of my weekly lore series, which will start with Lord of the Rings videos, or I should say Tolkien's Legendarium videos, because Lord of the Rings refers to one specific thing, the books, the Lord of the Rings book, okay? Uh, so let's start with the basics. The Half-Elven, or in Sindarin, one of the Elven languages, I'll have another video on that in a few weeks, uh, the Peredhel, Peredhel, the singular form being Parrot Hill with an I. Professor Tolkien's concept probably gave rise to the fantasy genre, the concept in the fantasy genre of the half human, half elves, who in most game systems are pitied by full blood elves and envied or disliked by the full blooded humans. Yet that's not the case with Tolkien's work, as we shall see below. The video is meant as a brief explanation for the concept. It's not a full explanation of the topic in Tolkien, breaking down how he explored over the years and alternate. None of that. This is so you. This is so when you're watching Peter Jackson Lord of the Rings films, or the Abomination Rings of Prime, or a first-time reader and you encounter the term, you don't have to go exploring everything to understand what the term means. So, what do you need to know? The first thing you need to know to understand the half elven is to answer the question: what is the relationship between the elves and men, between the firstborn, the elves, and the secondborn, men? In the beginning, before time, outside of Ea, the word Aea, the word for the universe, Eru led the music of the Ainur, which to an extent define the fate of all things inside Ea. Both men and elves are the children of Eru Yuvatar, or the children of Yuvatar, as shorthanded. The elves awoke first somewhere in the far northeast of Tolkien's version of Europe, in a place that came known as Kubainin, in 1050 in the years of the trees. Men awoke centuries later in the Far East away from Europe, and it's not in the main documents of Legendarium, but since Tolkien made the Legendarium compliant with his Catholic faith, this is basically a reference to the Garden of Eden. The chief difference between the two was elves were bound to Ea and the results of the music of the Ainur, whereas men ultimately could be freed from it when they die, and their soul, or Fea, uh, plural is fear. It's a Sindarin word. It means soul, or the unseen part of you, which is sent by Eru into the universe. Anyway, when men die, their Fea departs through the door of night and holds a man into the void, i.e., the afterlife. Elves and men both possess souls and bodies, or in Tolkien's terms, which derive from Proto-Germanic, uh, Fea, as I mentioned, and Hroa, Hroa, which is the Sindarin word for the physical, the seen, the body, the incarnated, so to speak. The term Fea, by the way, only applies to those who will have Hroa, who will incarnate. It doesn't apply to the term to the Ainur, so to speak, which are the Valar and the Maiar. Other than that, elves and men are basically physiologically almost identical, with elves essentially being physically perfect humans. So if there's a human trait, the elves have a perfect version of it. They never get sick. They'll never die. So long as you maintain their body alive. Like if, for example, if you ripped out an elf's heart, if you maintain his body with magic, his heart will eventually regrow. Yeah. The term human applies equally to both. The next thing to understand is the concept of the union of men and elves, or of elves and men. I'm sorry, the union of elves and men. There's nothing forbidden about a man and an elf having relations or getting married. However, Eru designed them such that they will rarely feel those feelings for one another. Thus, it was exceedingly rare for such relationships to occur. There have only been four four known recorded examples of the union of elves and men. And it's important to note, Tolkien states there have been other examples of it, but none of them impacted the legendarium, or they never bore children or whatever. So I have a family tree on the screen, which I'll explain a little. You'll understand as I go on. Um, the first known was Beren and Luthien, who are told in the tale of Beren and Luthien in the Silmarillion. Then there was Tuor and Idril. Then eventually there's Arwen and Aragorn. All three of those had kids. And in the case of love that was never fulfilled, meaning they loved one another and wanted to get married, there was Egnor and Andreth. Okay, as you can see in the family tree, Arwen and Aragorn are both descended from the two prior unions of elves and men, the marriages. The term half-elven refers to any child born of any such union. Okay, so it's a title. It's not a name. It's not a derogatory. It's not a species. It's a title, an honorific. It's considered a great thing, meaning while it's not exactly encouraged, if it happens, it's considered, oh, the children of Yuvatar are unifying. It's a glorious thing. Their children should be honored with this title type of thing. You know? Now, the waters get muddied when it comes to something referred to as the choice of the half-elven. Okay? Now, to understand the choice of the half-elven, we have to give you some background info. So let's start with Beren and Luthien. We're doing the long story short version of this, okay? Luthien is the daughter of Thingol, and Melian the Maya. Beren was the son and last chieftain of the House of Beor, one of the three kindreds of men who fought with the elves against Morgoth in the First Age. They became known as the Edain, which eventually the word Dunedain comes from. Okay? To make a long story short, Beren, already becoming a legend on his own, met Luthien and they fell in love. In Doriath, by the way, is the name of the kingdom. Thingol, the king of Doriath, was appalled that his daughter fell in love with the mortals, so he gave Beren a ridiculous quest to earn her hand. He had to recover his Silmaril from Melkor, or Morgoth, as it was renamed by Fëanor. Their story is told in the Silmarillion in Beren and Luthien, which is my favorite tale of the entire Legendarium. Okay, Beren and Luthien became legends. They were married and became the first of the union of elves and men. Now, the most relevant part. After recovering a Silmaril, the fell wolf Chakaroth bit off Beren's hand with the Silmaril. While hunting for the beast, Beren, along with Huon the Hound, slew him, but Beren was mortally wounded. In her grief, Luthien died. Luthien was an elf. And like all elves, when her soul went to the halls of Mandos to prepare to eventually reincarnate, she bespoke Mandos, the Valar, who held great pity for her and granted a boon. He restored both Beren and Luthien to life, but with the fate of men, both of them. They lived a quiet life together in Tol Galen and Osirialan, and Luthien, upon her second death, was allowed to have the mortal death of men, thus passing with Beren to whatever lay beyond Ea. Before they died, they had a son named Dior, who became Thingol's heir. Dior was the first of the half-elven. Dior had a daughter named Elwing, who we'll talk about later. You see it on the family tree. Now let's talk about Tuor and Idril. Tuor was a man of the Edain, of the house of Hador, but due to lineage, also descended from the other two houses of Edain. He was also descended from the two houses of Edain, the house of Haleth and the house of Beor. He is the son of Huor and the younger brother of Hurin, and thus the uncle of one of the most heroic and tragic figures of the First Age, Turin Turambar. Tuor was chosen by Ulmo, the Lord of the Waters, and probably the most friendly and helpful of the Valar to the children of Yuvatar repeatedly for tasks. Okay, Idril was the daughter of Turgon, the king of Gondolin, of the Noldor, and in other words, Idril was the daughter of Turgon, an older elf, the king of Gondolin, and Elenwi, a maiden of the Vanyar elves. Idril was responsible for further making secret passages into and out of Gondolin. When Gondolin fell, she and Tuor led most of the survivors through those passages. In the secondary lore, due to being chosen by Ulmo and do so much in the service of the elves, it is said that Tuor was allowed in Valinor in his old age and became the first man to be allowed to the fate of the elves. Tuor and Idril had a son, the legendary Eärendil the Mariner. So finally we get to Eärendil and Elwing. To keep a long story short, Eärendil married Elwing. Now, some people make a mistake and call Eärendil and Elwing the union of elves and men. They're not. They're both elves. They're both half-elven, but they're still, at this point, the choice of the half-elven doesn't exist yet. So they're both elves, okay? They had two children, Elrond and Elros. Near the end of the First Age, Morgoth was basically winning against the elves and the Edain. I'm grossly oversimplifying, okay? Eärendil was out at sea in the ship Vingalot, which had been crafted by Círdan the shipwright, searching for Tuor and Idril when the last sons of Fëanor attacked his home in Arvenanen. They sought the Silmaril that Elwing possessed. Rather than be captured, Elwing tossed herself into the sea, but almost saved her and gave her the ability to fly. She flew, searching for and eventually finding Eärendil on the Vingalot, and after being reunited, she told Eärendil what had happened. With everything falling apart, Eärendil stepped up to the plate and accepted the responsibility to solve the problem. He set sail for Valinor. Now, again, this is where the lore gets a little wonky, okay? Eärendil is a man and an elf at the same time, okay? The choice of the half-elven doesn't exist, and It's kind of weird. It's a retroactive thing because the choice of heaven was imposed on retroactively. That's why he became a man, so to speak. Again, so he sets up for Valinor, which was forbidden for mortal men, and given his status as being both essentially a man and an elf, he was subject to the pain of death for the crime, so to speak. He spoke to Valar, asking them to aid the men and elves in their fight against Morgoth. The Valar accepted his plea. Because he made the quest not for his own sake, but for all the men and elves, Manwë forbore the sentence of death. In honor of their quest, Manwë gave Elwing and Irindel and all the descendants what came to be known as the choice of the Half-Elven. Irindel would have chosen the fate of men, which is why he was retroactively accounted a man and the subject of the penalty. But since his wife Elwing chose of the elves, he did that too. Once a Half-Elven makes their choice, it's irreversible, and their descendants become become of that group, i.e., whatever the parent chose. Okay. Now their children were Elrond and Elros, which you see in the diagram. Okay. Elrond chose the path of the choice of the elves and lived a long life and is immortal and all that. Elros chose the path of man and became the first king of Númenor. Now it's the last bit on Arwen and Aragorn. They're the last union between elves and men. Both are descended from Irindel and Elwing, Aragorn via Elros and Arwen via Elrond. When Arwen made a choice to be immortal, she became the last of the Half-Elven who would have the choice of the Half-Elven. And to reiterate, despite what the show Stupid Rings of Primes indicated, Half-Elven or Parrot is not a title, not a name. Elrond is Elrond Parrot Hill or Elrond Half-Elven, as in Elrond the Half-Elven. Not Elrond you rotten Half-Elven, which is what the implication was in Rings of Prime. Okay? Thanks for watching my video. Smash the like button if you liked it. Hit dislike if you did. If you didn't, comment down below if you have questions for me or about this video, or you're requesting more lore videos and whatnot. I'll be doing these on a weekly basis. Please share your video if you found it worthwhile. I'm Matt. This has been another episode of Unbearable 73. Have a nice day, and I am out of here.